Welcome to the Money Mastermind Show. Let's talk money.
And welcome to the Money Mastermind Show. So, to me, moving, it's both an exciting time and also a major pain, both physically and financially. And I think what we're going to do tonight is we're going to discuss moving and ways to save, because I think it could be a major drain on your finances. Before we jump into that topic, here are the members of the Money Mastermind Show. We have Kyle Prevost of youngandthrifty.ca, Miranda Marquit of Planting Money Seeds, Peter Anderson of Bible Money Matters, Tom Drake of the Canadian Finance Blog is away right now. He is normally a member of our panel. And I am Glenn Craig of Free From Broke. So, before we start, as always, if you are following along live, you could head over to our event page. And if you have any questions regarding moving and the costs that are involved, drop them there. We'd love to hear your questions and answer them. So, now, moving. One of the major headaches I have is the cost. That and just actually putting the stuff together to move. But in my experience, the way I've done moving, it's just always been an expense, and it seems to always be an expense that hits, for lack of planning maybe on my part, but towards like the very end, when you're just about to do it, now here comes the cost of moving. And it hits me every time. Hopefully it's not too many times, but that's what happens. So what can we do to minimize those costs? Or at least make the process maybe a little bit easier, because sometimes costs are worth it if they're effective. What do you guys think?
Well, if only one of us had moved recently.
Yeah.
Or moved twice in the last year. 2 cross-country moves in the last year, maybe.
I think that's enough to make you an expert.
Yeah, you have the cross-country move that we get to discuss, which is certainly, I think, a beast in its own.
Oh, yeah, well, and and like I said, I mean, it's 2 in the last year. So the first, like last year when I moved to Pennsylvania, the cool thing is we used the full service movers, but we didn't have to pay for it because we were being paid for by a job. So it was great. So the best way to move is if you can get your workplace to pay for it, because that's the cheapest and best way to do it.
That's the best way to do almost anything, I think.
That's right. Get somebody else to do it.
Go to school, go out for dinner, get your company to pay for it. Perfect.
That's right.
But I think not always the option for most of us.
Right. Exactly. And so what I did this time, because now, of course, I've moved back from Pennsylvania. So I've moved from Pennsylvania back west. So this time I did kind of, it's what's known as a hybrid move, where I went ahead and I got the U-Pack thing. So, it's somebody else drives the truck, but I load it up. But instead of loading it up myself, because that's very painful and physically draining, we paid for professional mover packer people to do it. You can use, there's a lot of sites like hireahelper.com that can help you pack it up. So it costs less than a full service move, but it does cost a little bit more than doing it yourself, like with a U-Haul or something.
And this is what, a 2-part process where you're hiring people to pack it and then another company moves it? Is that what's happening?
Yeah. So with this one, what I did was I hired a U-Pack, and you put your stuff in the back of the trailer and then they drive it, but they don't pack it for you, so you have to hire somebody else to pack it. But when I measured it out, actually, it costs about the same amount as renting a U-Haul to drive across the country. By the time you rent the U-Haul and pay for the gas for the U-Haul, and then, pay for, wherever you stay at night on the way, just because of my location and, moving, because nobody wants to move to Idaho Falls, because of my location and everything, it ended up being about the same amount of money to have somebody else drive it as it was for me to rent a U-Haul. So there are those kinds of things. And then there are also people who, if you want to drive your own U-Haul, you can do this hire a helper thing and get somebody to pack it up for you. So if you're on a 3rd floor apartment, say, like I was, and you don't want to haul all your stuff down yourself, pay somebody else to do it. And it can be worth the money just to save you the trouble of trying to figure out how you are going to wrestle that king-size mattress down 3 flights of stairs.
Yeah, sometimes, getting your friends to help you is, I think, a great way to cut the costs, but sometimes there's not enough beer and pizza to get some people to do some things. Or just the physical layout of where you are mitigates your options there.
As the friend that is commonly asked to provide the king-size moving service for the beer and pizza, I only ask 2 things. 1, that the beer be cold, and 2, that you be organized when I get there. Too many times have I showed up to help friends, and I say this, I have moved, I would say 50 people conservatively, at least. And when they say they're done moving, and then you get there and like, oh, I just have to put the kitchen away. Or I just have to do this. So if you're going to ask your friends, be considerate of their time and, be cool.
That's right. That's right. If you're going to save money on your move, the least you can do is be helpful to all the people that you're cheaping out on.
And I think a big part, sorry, Peter, but a big part of what you're saying there is not just getting it done, but thinking about how you're going to get things out of the house. Because I've seen on too many, I've also helped a number of moves, maybe not quite 50, but enough that I don't like doing it. And I know that there's just always a good number of items where you get to it and you go, how in the world do we fit this? Like, it didn't come into the house this way, so there's really no.
Has anyone measured this?
Yeah. Everything comes in a box as far as furniture, and then it goes out fully built, and you sit there and go, what? And somehow you're at the bottom of some giant piece of furniture, going down steps very precariously, maybe just holding a corner that's like, inches from your face. Knowing that the people at the top of the steps aren't quite holding on as well as you would like, and then you wonder how you keep getting into this situation.
And that's why I just pay someone else to do it. That's where I'm at now. Because this is my 4th cross country move in my life, and and then I've had several moves in between, and I tell you what, it is worth it at the very least to hire somebody else to at least empty the stuff out of your place and pack it up for you, even if they don't do a full service move.
Did you comparison shop for that, Miranda, or ask for referrals, or sort of how did you narrow down your list of movers? Yeah,
so I used I used hirehelper.com to get the people to empty out the apartment and unpack. And actually, I'm using tomorrow. I've got the U-Pack trailer sitting at my new place right now. And tomorrow, guys are going to come up and help unload the trailer, and I'll just have to tell them where to put the stuff. But yeah, so I used hirehelper.com. No, I'm not getting paid to plug them. But I just used them because it was really easy to find. You put it on there, and then they have quotes. They'll have quotes by how much they each costed. So it's just kind of this aggregate, and then you can arrange it all through there. And here in Idaho Falls, they didn't have that option. Like Hire a Helper didn't have anybody available here. So all I did was I just Googled movers in Idaho Falls, or you can do moving truck unloaders in whatever city you're in, and then you'll get a list of people. It'll just come up on Google search, and then you can kind of compare prices that way.
Now, when you did this, do you take out any type of insurance on the move?
You can. You can buy extra insurance like U-Pack. Any full-service mover will offer it. Like if you have a full-service mover like with United Van Lines or Atlas or whatever else is out there, and even U-Pack, even these kind of semi-do-it-yourself things, you can buy extra insurance. Most of them come with standard insurance, but it's not very much. So if your stuff gets broken, you might not be eligible for that much. Like on our full service move going out to Pennsylvania, they damaged this dry sink that I had that, you can just rebuild it. It was a one of a kind piece. And so we had to put in a claim, and it was just a small, it looked like a small little damage, but because of the value of the piece, we ended up getting $200 for the claim on it. So it just sort of depends. But yeah, you can buy extra insurance, but most of them come with a standard amount of insurance, but it's not very much.
And I think you really have to look at the fine print on what the insurance actually covers as far as how they pay for things. It's been a while, at least 5+ years since I've last moved, but I remember something being along the lines of they paid by weight or some kind of wackiness like that. Like they didn't pay by object. It was just like a flat sort of rate. So if you were going to move and lose some stuff, you really wanted it to be dense.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's like 60 cents for like 100 pounds or something. I don't know. It's something ridiculous.
Yeah. So I mean, keep in mind that even if you're getting the insurance, it may not quite cover what you want it to cover.
Right.
Did you have to evoke it? So for you, as going across the country, that seemed to be a big factor in hiring people.
Right.
The DIY option of that sort of minimized itself more because of the amount of work that you would have had to have done. Right,
and the distance involved also kind of negates, like I'm sure like Kyle and you and Peter, who have done, recently done more moves like that are more local, would probably say that like just getting a U-Haul for the day makes more sense. When you're going across the country, you really want to consider the gas prices and everything else because it really starts to even out between you driving and like some other company driving. Even if you don't get a full service move, companies like Atlas Van Lines and United or whatever it is, there's a bunch of these companies. U-Pack isn't the only one. A bunch of them will let you, will come and, load up the truck and drive it for you. So, I mean, you can kind of compare the prices, but if you have a situation where you load up the truck and then they just drive it for you, a lot of the time it's pretty comparable in price. And then you don't have the hassle of trying to, maneuver a truck through Chicago or whatever.
And I was going to say, I'm sure a huge factor of that is just the experience in driving a vehicle like that. I've done the process where I've hired, I rented a truck for the day for a move. And it wasn't a terribly far distance, and I knew it could fit it all into one truck. It was basically just, I think, me and my dad. Maybe I had a friend help out too. So it wasn't too crazy to knock out. But I remember driving this big thing and going, wow, if I had to put a lot of miles on this, I might not be so comfortable doing it, because you're trying to park it and find a spot for it. And, I'm used to kind of like a small Corolla-like car. So you start putting me in a truck with these giant size mirrors, and it's a different sort of thing. So if I had to do cross country and go through like all sorts of different towns and cities and look at different driving rules depending on where you are, I could see that being a little a little hectic.
And then you go over the Continental Divide.
That's a real thing to consider because this last time I moved, we rented a U-Haul and it's a pretty local move, wasn't very far, but driving one of those huge, we got a bigger truck this time than we have in the past just because we have more stuff now and we just thought it made more sense because it wasn't that much more money. But before I got in that big truck, I'm pulling out of the U-Haul parking lot. Before I even get out of the parking lot, I already had an accident with this thing.
Oh my gosh.
They had these jacks or these little trailers that were in the parking lot and I couldn't see them through the mirrors on this huge truck. And I pull out and I hear this big scraping sound and then metal on asphalt and just horrible scraping. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I just do? And one of the guys from the U-Haul office comes running out and says, stop. And so it turns out they had left something in the drive and I hadn't seen it. They probably shouldn't have left it there. But again, if you're not used to driving a big truck like that and you're not aware of how big it actually is, you can have some serious problems. So you need to make sure you have insurance coverage and all that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, you try to mitigate the cost by doing it yourself, but if you get into a major accident, you pull into your own driveway and hit the side of the house, you do something crazy like that, and all of a sudden all those savings go out the window. So you have to know you'd be able to do it. And look how many of us drive big trucks. Some people have that experience, and that's great. If you have a buddy, a friend that you're going to have help you and they have experience, then maybe that's where you need to go. But certainly, I would think you have to consider that. Now, I haven't done this in a while. The last time I moved and hired a truck was a while ago, so I don't quite remember the process. But how much of your personal insurance can you use? Is that something that you could combine when you rent a truck like that? Do you know?
Oh boy, I don't remember.
Oh man.
Because I wonder how close it is
Don't the jumps.
with renting a car. If you can use your own insurance on that. I don't know if that the same applies when you're renting a moving truck. I just wonder if you get that same coverage.
Well, I think it depends, though. I mean, I think you might want to just call your insurance company and find out about that and figure out if that sort of liability insurance transfers over. I would think that, you're going to see more of a chance that the liability might, but they may even also charge you a small fee or something, or make you get extra insurance. So,
But even then, it still might be more cost effective and maybe more efficient to have your own insurance than
Yeah, I think I ended up paying for some extra insurance through the company itself, just because I was like, man, I'm not comfortable driving this thing, and if there's an accident, I don't want to have to worry about it. I think my credit card probably covered it as well. So
that's just gonna say.
good point. Yes, check your credit
your
card.
credit card will cover car rental insurance sometimes, so it's something to check and call your credit card company. But I just went ahead and paid for the extra insurance because it was a 1-day rental, and it was only an extra. It wasn't very much extra for
Yeah,
where I rented from.
that's the same approach I took, Peter. The peace of mind was worth the few bucks that it was.
Yep.
Yeah, and really that's what the insurance is, isn't it? What other considerations do you have? I would think certainly how much stuff and what it is that you're actually moving is probably going to play a lot into who you're going to hire too. Some people have a move where you could throw it all into like one pickup truck. You have one buddy with a big SUV or something and you're set to go. But I've seen moves where you really have to hire a big truck. Either you got to rent that big truck or hire people to do it. That's a lot of stuff. Like you're talking an all-day move. So, I mean, yeah, how does that play into it for you guys?
It seems like every time you move, you have more stuff every time. We moved, I think, about 9 years ago, and even then I felt like we had a ton of stuff. Then we moved again, 2 years ago now, and it's insane the amount of stuff that you accumulate, especially after you've had kids. You've got all sorts of kids' clothing and who knows, all kinds of stuff. One thing that we did when we moved this last time, though, is we just gave away to Goodwill probably 3 carloads of stuff. I mean, it was a ton of stuff. We were able to take a small tax deduction for that, and we didn't have to end up moving it to the new house either, which saved a bit of a headache. So.
Yeah, and don't forget, if you do the tax deduction on the stuff that you donate to, like a Goodwill or Salvation Army, or here out west, Desert Industries, if you're going to donate to those kinds of places, you need to make sure you keep a record of what you've donated, so that, because you will need that for your taxes. You'll need to remember to get a receipt from the donation center. Most of them will just give you a receipt and then you just fill it in yourself. But yeah, you need to make sure that you keep that for your records as well. Just a little note. We did that on our way out of town as well. We had a pile of stuff that we left at the Goodwill on our way out of town.
Yeah, the more you get rid of beforehand, the less you're going to have to throw in a truck and then unpack. And, like you said, Peter, you end up with so much stuff to move. And how much of that stuff just, like, it ends up being the box that you moved from the last move. And you haven't even opened it up.
Like you said earlier about not being able to get furniture into certain places. We did that last time. We moved these 2 huge couches out of our old house, and we moved them into the new house thinking, oh, this is going to go great in our basement. Well, it turns out we couldn't even get them into the basement when we got to the new house. They were too big to fit down the stairway, and there was no way to really take them apart. So at that point, we just ended up putting them in the garage, and they sat out there for a couple months until we sold them on Craigslist anyway. So sometimes it's a good idea to think about those things, plan ahead before you move, and think, is this really going to work at our new house? Is this furniture going to fit our new decor? Is it going to fit down the stairway? All those sorts of things. And if not, maybe you want to think about selling that stuff beforehand or donating.
Right, because that's a cost for you to move that. Look, a couple of couches, that's a good part of a truck right there. You probably could have maybe had a smaller truck or maybe that crew did it a little bit sooner. So, yeah, whatever you could have gotten rid of that for probably would have saved you money right off the bat.
Exactly. We could have sold it on Craigslist and had somebody pay us money for it and move it for us.
Right. Just grab it and go. Or even sometimes if you donate it, they'll come and pick things up too. Depending on where you go.
Yeah.
On sort of the sort of the flip side of that comment, if you're looking at buying a house, or I guess selling a house for that matter, if you're not doing the rental thing, don't be shy about asking if people want to throw stuff in. When I moved in, I to my first place, I didn't have a lot of furniture and such, and I definitely made the appeal to the inner lazy man, where I was like, yeah, you could move those couches upstairs, or I could give you $50 and you could leave them down there. They were fine, they were good. They're not maybe forever couches or whatever the case may be, but they certainly work for a young guy in his first house. So don't be afraid to appeal, and I think it worked pretty well for both parties. Actually, I fully intend to try and negotiate some of that in when I move in and leave stuff there. So.
Definitely. Like everything is negotiable, and you never know until you ask.
So another thing to think about when you're moving, and that I didn't think about too much until, but if you have a piano, they will charge you extra for that piano. We ended up, when we did local moves, we actually had to hire separate piano movers to move our piano from one house to the other because, yeah. Because nobody wanted to move our piano, right?
Be making so much money. I've moved like 8 pianos.
Have you really?
Oh wow!
Yeah, I have like a whole system with rollers and pulleys, and yeah.
Wow.
Oh my
You're
gosh!
doing the wrong thing.
No, dude, you can charge like $100 to $200 a pop just from you moving a piano from one house to the other, dude.
That is.
Make it your
Wow, I
business.
have to start reevaluating here. Get this blog.
That should be like your side
gonna
gig.
move pianos.
So you get the
We left our
stereotypical-
piano in Utah.
They had the idea of the piano on the rope and pulley system, trying to pull it up to the 4th floor or something, crashing onto the street below. That's why nobody wants to move it.
Yeah, we actually ended up getting our piano for free because the prior people didn't want to move it. They actually said, do you want the piano? Because otherwise we have to, pay to get it out of here. And we were like, yeah, you can keep it. You can leave it here rather. That's all right. We'll take that.
Dude, if someone gives you a free piano, you say yes, man.
Yeah, even if it's a little out
You
of
see how
tune, it's
expensive those
okay.
things are?
Just pretend to play. You'll learn one day, right?
The other thing people never want to move is that pool table in the basement.
No, that
And I actually helped a friend to move one of those one time, and that was the worst thing I've ever tried to move. There was this heavy slate top on this table, and we're trying to push this thing up the stairs. I almost lost my fingers because that thing was so heavy, and guys at the top of the stairs weren't pulling their weight, and they lost their grip, came sliding back down the stairs, and almost took my fingers and crushed them into the wall. So
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
you might be better off avoiding those hospital bills and just leave the pool table. Just don't even try.
Or hire professionals to move it.
Or hire professionals that know what they're doing. Yeah. But again,
I think you always hear like the frugal side of things and how you could do things by yourself and save so much money. But I think also it really depends on who you are, and sometimes it's really worth it to hire somebody who's an expert. Because I've certainly moved stuff on my own, and you're kind of figuring it out as you go. When you have that like that washing machine on your back, going down the narrow steps. I mean, I have a lot of these types of stories, unfortunately. It's not fun. But when you see a moving guy do it, it seems like they just know what to do. They get these like things, they wrap these things around their arms and they're picking up and they move. It just happens. So yeah, I mean, what they can do, what would take me like 2 hours getting down the steps, they're done in 15 minutes.
Well, that's
And one less
sort of-
hernia later.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You avoid all the medical bills. One thing I was going to say is, so the guys coming tomorrow, they're going to be done unloading the truck in like, I don't know, hour and a half maybe, 2 hours tops. But if it was just like me and a couple other people doing it ourselves, it would take us twice as long at least. We'd be there for like half the day or more, just unloading the truck. And these guys, I know, are going to get it done pretty fast. And the guys that loaded up the truck, it took them like an hour, to do what would have taken us forever. So I think there's something to be said about people, the experts who just do it all the time, all day.
And sometimes when you're moving, like if you just bought a house and you just sold a house and you just packed up everything you own and the whole family's going somewhere else, like you're already kind of emotionally and maybe physically spent. And to spend a day doing that, it's a lot. I mean, just even when you have somebody else move it for you, it's a lot. So I mean, I guess there's that factor too.
I was going to say the last 2 times. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I was kind of bad anyway.
I was going to say the last 2 times we've moved too. It, like you said, it being drained and just being draining and stressful, and paying people to do it. Well, the last 2 times we've moved, we've done a DIY where we moved ourselves, and we didn't exactly plan ahead the best because the time of the year that we were moving, that might be something to consider as well. If you're moving in the heat of summer and you're doing it yourself, it may not always be a great idea. Both of the last 2 times we moved in August, and we moved on like the hottest day of the year. The first time it was 105 the day we moved, and we had a couple of people that almost dropped from exhaustion. And the last time we moved, it was over 100 as well. It was like 101. So that's something else to consider. Do you really want to risk your health and life and limb to move?
That you were able
if
to
you
do
plan ahead and do it on a cooler day.
and did your friends help you each time, or?
We did. We did the.
Were they the
thing,
same
buy them lunch? Yes, I can't say they're all still friends, but.
That's pretty amazing that you got them to do it twice. I could see going through it the first time, and then you have to find like a whole bunch of new people to go through it again.
We had a 6-year buffer in between the moves, so I think it was enough time for them to kind of forget a little bit.
Yeah. But that's not to say that when you hire a crew, I've never hired people to actually pack the stuff for us, and that's certainly an extra expense right there. But it's not cheap. You definitely have to plan that amount into a move and be prepared to pay that money, and then you tip them also, and it just always seems to be an expense. They'll say they'll do it in 4 hours, it takes 8 hours, but to me it's well worth it if I don't have to pack a house up and move it, rather just move a whole house.
Right, well, and part of that too though is it goes back to what we were talking about before, is when you're talking about being organized. So even if you have somebody else like box your things up for you, which is something I have never done before, but even if you have somebody box your thing, just because it costs so much extra, you can add a couple $1,000s to your move because you have somebody else box your stuff up. I just put on a lame TV show and watch that binge watch it on Netflix every night for 3 weeks while I box in the evenings, right? But even if you have somebody else box it up, if you can be organized, if you can have, your rooms organized and just know what you're taking and just kind of be a little bit prepared, that can speed it along and kind of reduce the cost a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, just as Kyle was saying, even when when you have your friends do it for you, if you're organized, it helps. Even with moving people, if you're ready to go, it's going to make the whole situation a lot easier, as opposed to like where you're still trying to grab and figure things out at the last minute, and that adds so much stress to the moving day too. Which is,
as I mentioned, you're talking about packing boxes. That's something else that you need to think about too, is all the packing materials and supplies and boxes and packing tape and blankets to throw over the furniture so it doesn't get scratched. All that stuff can add up too.
It's an art form in itself, isn't it? Look, I still come from the CD world and the book world, the physical book world, and a box full of CDs is pretty small, but damn, it feels like a black hole. It's so heavy, and dense. And books too. So you have to start planning. Well, unless I want to really rip my back up, I have to make sure I was half the CDs and maybe half socks. Something really you got to figure out where everything is. You got to track everything too. The more planning that you put into it, probably the easier it makes everything.
Yeah, it's definitely true. As a guy that unpacked and packed many U-Hauls and such when I worked as a student border guard, and was one of those jerks that asked you to unpack your U-Haul when you crossed the border for an international reason, I got to see many people's either mistakes or professionalism in terms of packing. And then when I repacked their stuff, I often took pride, oddly enough, in trying to achieve a better outcome for them when I repacked their vehicle. just because I put them through such an ordeal, like killing a half hour of their move or whatever the case may be. I tried to sort of be like, maybe you want to think about this, and they'd end up with a foot of extra room at the back of their trailer that they really had no use for at the time. But anyhow, it does make a difference. I can tell you that many times when people unloaded, they had scratched tables, or perhaps that box of CDs had been squished by something else, and their outer row of CDs was crushed. And so, you balance the pros and cons there. Maybe they shouldn't have even bothered with it if it wasn't important enough to worry about, or maybe if they'd pre-planned, they would have had more success. I'm not sure, but it's important to give yourself some time to consider this stuff.
Yeah, I think too often it's that like day before, all of a sudden you're putting everything together, and then you realize like appliances, like a blender and things like that, like where do you put them? They don't fit into a box neatly, because I mean, if you have the original materials, you put the styrofoam back on, you tape it up, and you're done. But odds are you don't have that. Like you have like one of those KitchenAid mixers. One, those things are also like a black hole of dense weight. And two, like there's nowheres to put them. You just kind of grab the head of that thing and just move it, and hope that it doesn't get wrecked. Maybe put a towel around it, or do you try to put it into a box and hope that it doesn't like rip through the bottom? There's a lot of logistics to go through. And sometimes you don't even know what those logistics are until you've actually moved a couple of times too. So maybe that's a good idea too. If you could volunteer for one of your friends, you're going to learn a lot.
If I screwed up the KitchenAid mixer move, I might as well just move my half of the stuff to another house, because my wife would not be impressed with me.
No. And those things aren't cheap either.
We found the good solution to scratching things up was to use that plastic wrap stuff. Just wrap everything in plastic, and then it's protected, and it doesn't come apart, it doesn't fall apart, and just wrap everything in plastic wrap. It doesn't cost that much to get one of those big rolls of plastic wrap, maybe $5 or $10 from the moving place, and it's well worth it, because all your nice living room furniture that costs so much money is not going to get all scratched up and so forth. So,
and sometimes you need something
that might cost some money, but lovely.
I was going to say, sometimes you actually need something a little tougher, and you need to have like that sort of that quilt sort of thing that they have to throw on things. Because even the plastic wrap still, once you throw it onto a truck and it's weighted somewhere, it only does so much before the little bubbles pop, and you're like, no, now it's raw. Which is one thing that's nice about when you have a mover, because they always have like a truck full of that stuff. But let me ask you, if you're going to do DIY, and boxes and everything like that, what do you do for materials? Do you do the whole, like, you go to nearby stores like a Target or supermarkets and stuff and try to get boxes, or do you eat the cost and go to a store and just buy like fresh boxes and tape?
I like the Rubbermaid. Rubbermaid is your friend for things like the KitchenAid mixer, and that's for a fairly low cost. And I mean, you'll always find a use for that stuff later. I have yet to find a person that doesn't find a use for their Rubbermaid container. And it helps for at least with the really awkward stuff, like the box and the newspaper concoction can work for a lot of things, but whatever you're putting on the bottom and whatever you sort of want to protect, it's worth the structural integrity to invest in some cheap Rubbermaid type stuff.
Actually, I mean, you say that you're talking about like the big ones.
I gotta argue with Kyle here for a minute.
Uh-oh.
Kyle and I are going to have a disagreement.
Ooh, let's have a debate, a heated debate.
It's going to be a heated debate about Rubbermaid things. Actually, the structural integrity of one of those big Rubbermaid containers, not that good. Because if you don't have it packed tight, it will buckle and crack.
True.
I think it depends on which ones you buy also, though.
Yeah, so, I mean, getting, like, the cheap ones might actually be worse. Because I was talking to some of the professional movers, and they were like, it's better to get, like, the smallish kind of medium-sized boxes and, pack those good, and those will actually have better structural integrity than a lot of, like, the bigger Rubbermaid bins. So, and we've used Rubbermaid bins in the past. It's better if you're going to use Rubbermaid bins to, like, stack the Rubbermaid bins on the Rubbermaid bins and then kind of measure out what you're doing. Does that make? I'm talking with my hands, but yeah. So. Yeah, right.
Yes, I agree. Unfortunately, there'll be no heated argument. I just agree 100%. I guess I was just talking versus the soggy wet paper box mode of transport.
But
Yeah,
I
well,
think
and
it also depends on which ones you're buying too, because I've seen some that are thicker than others. And it depends on
That's
what you're putting it to and where you're going to throw it. Just because it's plastic doesn't mean it's indestructible.
Right.
You're not going to put it under the washing machine. You're going to still make sure it's on top of things.
right.
That sounds like an engineering challenge project. Like design a Rubbermaid box that can withstand the washing machine.
Well, so another thing to think about too is a lot of what I do is save. If I know like a move's coming up, I started saving Amazon boxes because I get a lot of stuff from Amazon. And so if you do like online purchasing, a lot of the boxes they send that stuff in, that's built to withstand shipping. And so use those, save those boxes. You don't have to pay for them, and save those boxes and use them for your move.
Yeah, so the last time we moved, we did a combination of buying a few boxes, and they were mainly the really big boxes that we needed. We had to buy those ones, but for the rest of them, we just went on Craigslist. And if you just go on Craigslist and search for moving supplies or for moving boxes, it's amazing how many free boxes there are out there. People that have just moved and they have a bunch of empty boxes in their garage, they'll just say, "You come and get the boxes, you can have them for free, no big deal." And
that's a great point, because after you move, what do you do with that stuff? Unless, like you say, you're going to move again and maybe you have some use for it. You just have a ton of boxes that you end up maybe just putting out in recycling.
Yeah, so we were fortunate.
Exactly.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd call it that, but we actually we saved some of our boxes from our move out to Pennsylvania, and so they were already labeled. So for some of the stuff, we just went and got boxes that we had already labeled and packed stuff that matched the label. It was kind of sad, but that requires you knowing that you're going to move again somewhat soon.
Yeah, look, if you're moving somewhere, consider also your timeline too. I think if you're moving into a house, it's a more or less, if you've just bought a place, it's a safe bet that you're probably not going to move sometime soon. But if you're renting someplace, and you got a 1-year lease, you don't know where you'll be in a year. You don't know if you're going to be happy with the apartment, if the landlord's going to be happy with you. So you might want to somehow find some space in the back of a closet for some boxes, for that just in case move. And be prepared for that. This way you don't have to go through that whole process again. I know for me, we've tried to get boxes, but, you end up just never really finding enough in the right sizes. So I'll usually tend to go to like a U-Haul or even maybe a Home Depot and buying the boxes there. And this way you can kind of pick the sizes that you need. And a lot of places, too, they'll let you buy them, and if you don't use them, you can just return them, which is nice too. And I think a big consideration, I think you mentioned it, Miranda, when you buy those big ones, it seems like it's really great, but they don't balance very well. So when you have a giant box and you start piling it in, it starts to sag on the bottom. Like you really can't do a whole lot with it, and you can't pick them up. If you take a big box of books and you're not going to pick it up. On the other hand, the smaller boxes actually are stronger, especially if you just wrap them up with tape as much as you need to. But they're easy to use, although you're going to pay for each box too. So you really have to kind of consider the things you're going to move and how many boxes you need as well.
Yeah, and there are a lot of smallish boxes that come from Amazon that are really great for books. Because as much as you're like, hey, I'd like to pile all these books in, like, are you going to be able to lift it up? And what about those poor moving guys that you hired? Are they going to be able to lift it up?
Hey,
right?
If I'm hiring them, that's kind of their problem.
That's their
I don't
problem.
want to sound.
Sounds like a personal problem to me.
It's not so much the weight of the box. Like honestly, I don't want to sound like
so awkward.
I don't want to sound inconsiderate, but if I'm hiring you, you're going to move it. But
you're a bad person, Glenn.
Look, they didn't pay them now. These are people that move refrigerators and such, so they can handle a box of books.
Yeah, you keep telling yourself that.
But to me, though, the consideration though is one, you're still going to probably have to move it when you get into your new location, right? They'll put it in the living room, but maybe you need it on the second floor at some point. And two, when they pick it up, you don't want it falling apart.
Right.
So that's what you really have to think about. So if it's too heavy that it's going to like break and whatever, then that's no good. And that's really kind of on you at that point if some things go wrong and start getting busted up and whatnot.
Agreed.
So what other considerations Do you have, we've kind of talked about all sorts of different things. I don't think we have a definitive how to save. I think we just have lots of different options. I know, maybe just to go back a little bit, when we sold our place before we bought our house, because we were selling it, we needed it to be as empty as possible when we were showing it. So at that point, we actually purged a lot of stuff. So then when we were actually moving, we still have too much stuff, but it was a little bit easier. We'd already kind of like packed up a lot of stuff and put it into a garage and whatnot so that we could show the house. So I think that was nice. What else? What other considerations?
Well, one thing to think about is whether you're going to need some storage. So, I didn't have an address when I came out here, so I stored my stuff for a month. Our stuff that we had, it was stored for a month and it just barely got delivered today, and we'll unload it tomorrow. But you got to think about the storage as well if you're not going to have a place to put your stuff. And one of the things that I found, there are a couple ways they can do this. I was getting different quotes. I got quotes from different types of movers before settling on the U-Pack option this time. And I had a mover come, and he said, this was interesting, in Pennsylvania, what they had to do, because I wanted to store it for a month, what they said they were going to do is they were going to break it down into 2 different moves. The first move was going to be our apartment into storage, and we were going to have to pay for that move separate. And so that move alone was going to be like $1,000 just to move from the apartment into storage, and then they were going to store it it was going to be in Delaware for a month, and then they would move it from storage onto the truck and drive it out here to Idaho. And that option was really expensive. So then when I was looking at like the U-Pack option, when they put it in this trailer, they actually you load up the trailer, you put the bulkhead in to like divide your stuff up, and they'll just leave it in there the whole time, and you can store it for a month on the trailer, and it costs a lot less. And then there are things like the pods, those little pods that they, give you. You can do that as well. You can store those for a month. You can get, if you need 1, 2, 3, however many pods you need, you just put it in there, you lock it up, and they'll come pick it up, and then they'll store it for you for as long as you need it to be stored until you're ready to have it delivered to your new place. So kind of think about that, and think about how much the storage will cost you, and whether you're going to have to do it as separate moves or whether it can be all in one package. And in the end, it costs less if you can do it all as like one package a lot of the time.
Yeah, there's definitely some logistics to that in actually getting to the storage. If whoever's moving it to your house, they may not be keen on going, oh yeah, I'll make that second stop.
Say the last time we moved, we had to put all of our stuff in storage for 3 months because we were building our house at the time, and we had to vacate the other house because we had sold it. So it was a matter of we looked into those pods and other services like that, and we just found it was so expensive to do that as compared to us just moving our stuff into the storage first on our own. And with that, we were able to find a storage. We called around to a bunch of different storage places, and we were able to find one that offered a free month of storage and then 2 more months at a pretty low rate. And when you compared it to something like pods or something like that, which are convenient, it was so much less expensive that it just made so much more sense for us to do that. Now, if it was a longer move, like the one you were doing, that may not have been a very good option, but for us in that situation, it did work out better that way.
Right, and I think you make a good point there when you talked about convenience. I think whenever you're moving or doing just about anything in life, the more convenient it is, it's likely to cost you a little bit more. So then you have to decide on that trade-off. How much is your convenience worth? How much is your time worth? And what's that trade-off going to be worth to you?
And I think also you have to consider storage in itself can be an easy crutch. Like, oh, let's just put it in storage. But if you've got a lot of stuff in storage,
it's there forever.
yeah. I mean, at a certain point, you got to go like, is there a way I could just eliminate this storage and eliminate that cost? And if you don't have to even put it in storage, then you're not even paying to move it. If you could sell it, if you could do something else with it, you might even be able to make some money off of it before you move.
They have entire shows about people who put stuff in storage and just abandon it. Storage Wars and all those other shows. You wonder what that half those people are people that are moving or something. They just put it in there and, I don't need it.
I figured those shows were just the husband and wife arguing about what they were going to keep, hence the storage war.
But here's the thing too. Like, I mean, I forget that there's some sort of law that applies to it, but whatever space you have is going to get filled up, no matter where you are. You could move into a palatial estate, like all of a sudden you bought like a whole city block worth of stuff, and you will fill it up because you have that space.
I refuse to do that in my new place. You can check back with me in like a year or two, and we'll see.
I'm going to throw this out there. There's certainly been a lot written about this, and a lot of arguments that go into it, and there's certainly good and bad to each side of the story. But I think moving is definitely a consideration that you have to think about in the rent versus own equation. When you own a home, you make that move, and whatever cost it is, you probably, unless something bad happens or you really change your mind, you're going to be there for a while. So that kind of mitigates the cost of the move. But when you're renting, hopefully you could stay in a place for a long time, but you never know. You could be moving every year, every 2 years, depending on where you are. And every time you do that, the cost of moving comes in one way, shape, or form. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah. So there was...
I was just going to say, I think not nearly enough people take that into consideration, Glenn. Just basically the idea of even if you do own a home, it's becoming more and more common to have the starter home, and then it's a race to get into the next step, and then we got to move into the home of our dreams. And a lot of people don't realize all the costs they're eating as they do that. And that might be a whole other show on its own, but moving costs and commissions to professionals and all that other stuff, that eats in massively, even if you're in a great housing market that goes up and up and up. I don't think a lot of people realize as you climb that housing ladder, and never mind, like you say, renting where it's year to year or even month to month sometimes, just how many, either the cost you pay in either favors and friendships or in cold hard cash.
Right, and another thing to consider as you're upgrading your house constantly is, people are like, oh, well, the cost of moving, but what about the cost of having a larger house? So if you're upgrading, you're going to have to pay higher property taxes because you'll have more property. Your bigger house is probably going to cost you more in terms of utilities because you'll use more heat, you'll need more cooling. Your electricity costs will probably go higher. There's a lot of things that go into that. If you have an empty space, we were talking about filling up your empty space. Well, if you buy a bigger place, all of a sudden, what are you, like a couch short? Suddenly you're a couch short. And me, I just moved from an apartment that came with a washer and dryer in the unit, and now I'm in a rental house that does not have a washer and dryer in unit. So now I'm sitting here going, I gotta buy a washer and dryer. And I've got a house. I'm supposed to take care of the lawn. I gotta buy a lawnmower. I was in an apartment before and didn't have to worry about a lawnmower, but now I gotta buy a lawnmower. So
and when you move, you're gonna have to move that stuff too.
And those are
right.
When I move, I'll have to move it.
That's not even just I buying a new and bigger house. If you're just moving laterally and you're renting, because that happens, your landlord's not happy with it, they raise it, you're not happy with the neighborhood anymore, you move, whatever it is, you can still find yourself moving every few years. And you find that apartment, you're like, oh, this is great. Oh, but the couch doesn't fit, or the entertainment center doesn't fit, or like you said, we bought a washer and dryer here, but that place has a washer and dryer. Or it doesn't, and you end up having to buy it. So there's a lot of incidental costs, I think, that play in to this whole rent versus own equation that I think you have to put a lot of time into thinking about as well. It's more than just hiring a truck and getting some boxes.
Yeah, I think that is one of the biggest things about moves that people don't think about is all the extraneous costs that go along with it. As far as transferring utilities, I was reading one of the articles somebody on my site wrote, and they said they had to pay $50 to have the gas company turn their gas back on. There was an electric company charge of $25 to turn on the utilities. There was a $100 install fee for the cable, $250 deposit for their new house that they were renting. So all these little fees, it may not seem like very big fees, but then you're doing it for 5 or 10 different places. It adds up quick, to $500, $1,000 or more. And then add into the fact you're buying new furniture or appliances or whatever else to fill up the space. So it adds up quick.
And don't forget, it's not just the hookup fees too for some of this stuff. For some things, like we got we had cable internet, and we had DirecTV, and then you move and you have to cancel your account because you're moving across the country and they don't service your area, and you have no choice but to cancel the account and terminate your contract. They don't care that you don't have service in your new area. You're still paying that termination fee. You know, if you've been on a 2-year contract, you're still paying that early termination fee.
Yeah, you got to
Sometimes.
look into that.
Not all the time.
Sometimes.
Yeah, it depends on the contract. We actually
Depends
got
on the contract and who it is.
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Watch for a blog post ranting against Comcast.
Uh-oh.
Oh, God.
But you know, that's a thought too. You know,
I'm sure you'll be the first one.
I know, right? Nobody complains about Comcast.
But when you move to a new place and the services may not be as good, or it may cost more to get, or you think that a service is there, but they don't have it, you know, like you think like maybe you could get Fios or something like that, but oh yeah, we don't service that area yet. And, you know, maybe it costs, yeah, there's a lot of things that play into it that you have to think about. Moving isn't always an easy thing. And I think we've certainly talked and touched on a lot of different things. I can't believe that we've gone through almost an hour already. I feel like we were just kind of touching the tip of the iceberg here. But we have gone an hour, and I think we've talked about a lot of good things. I don't know that we have concrete tips to say, you know what, if you need to move, you need to do this. Because I think like a lot of personal finance, it really depends on your situation and what you're doing and what you can handle. But I think we've brought up enough different factors and issues so that if you are moving, you know what to think about and you know what to look at. And I think that's important. So let's start to wrap up, and we'll go around and have a final word on how to save money on your next move. So, Kyle, what are your tips or your summation?
Well, I can't sing or dance, but I can move heavy things. And so I can give one tip that sounds ridiculous, but when you're moving, take the 10 minutes to warm up a little bit if you're trying to do this yourself, especially if you're not a professional. This sounds ridiculous, but if you go to jerk, effectively clean and jerk the amount of weight that you haven't lifted in years, if at all, without warming up, you're going to throw at your back, which obviously sucks, and it's going to impact your entire move. You're not going to have as much energy. You're going to be short with people. I've just saw it many, many, many times where people hurt themselves because they haven't bothered to stretch a little bit and warm up their muscles. It sounds stupid. It's a small thing, but it can greatly impact your day.
You know what? That's so huge, because I think when you're moving, you forget like how big and bulky some things are, and we all tend to have a little bit of hubris and think that we're stronger and more able than we actually are. At least me. Miranda, what's your final word on saving on moving?
Yeah, get creative. We're no longer in this area where it's like it's either do it yourself or full service. There's a lot of things you can do in between. So it's possible to kind of mix and match depending on your needs and your budget to find something that might be a little more convenient and still be affordable. So I just think it's, get creative, think out of the box, and kind of mishmash things, because you really can find all these options that'll help make something affordable for you.
And Peter, what's your final word?
My final word is just to start thinking about the move as far in advance as you can. Think about making a battle plan for what you're going to be doing. Think about all the different things that really need to be thought about. Maybe even create a checklist for moving. Think about all the things that you're going to have to do. All the utilities you're going to have to shut off and then turn on the other side. The things that you're going to need to rent, the companies you're going to need to hire, the insurance you're going to need, everything that you're going to have to do once you're at the new place too. So just sit down, make a battle plan, make sure you know what you're doing when the day arrives, and plan ahead so it doesn't turn into one of those situations where you're scrambling on the day of trying to pack things into a box and end up putting everything on your credit card because everything costs more than you realize. So make a battle plan.
Those are good points. The more time you have to do it, the easier it is. And one just consideration I thought of is all the different places where you're going to have to change your address and phone number. If you can make a list of all those, and then you can attack that beforehand. You get to the post office and have all your mail forwarded to the new spot, like well beforehand, so you don't even have to worry about old mail. there's all sorts of little logistical things like that if you could take care of, it makes things a lot easier. You don't want to have a bill that's floating out there and you didn't get it because you moved. Then all of a sudden you're paying credit card fees and whatnot. But great advice, everybody here. I think we've definitely brought our experience to the table today to help our people out there. So that's great. Thank you, everybody out there, for watching and listening. And until next week, be good with your money.
Thanks for joining us on the Money Mastermind Show. Get more information at moneymastermindshow.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Google+.